Good morning. This is Dennis Fuchs with the Stearns County Soil Water Conservation District. Latest update. And today I'm going to share a study that talks about how water quality can be improved by 20% without any additional cost to the landowner. This is a study that was conducted by the University of Minnesota research team, and with a result that could be a big help for water planners. Derek Pennington, a research associate at the university's Institute on the Environment, recently led a study on 7 Mile Creek, an ag watershed in the Minnesota River Basin, and his report is titled Cost-Effective Land Use Planning, Optimizing Land Use and Land Management Patterns to Maximize Social Benefits. The study's aim was to come up with a model of how ag practices can reduce sediment and phosphorus the most in a given watershed without costing farmers ag income, saving you money. Pennington and his team surveyed local farmers on their average practices. Their study was based on 3,262 small units called hydrologic response units, usually with several units on each farm. They used the soil and water assessment tool to collect data on the units. Looking at ways to be cost effective was the motivation behind the study, Pennington said. You have a farmer's perspective on it's going to cost, and also that's where we started to look at the trade-offs for water quality in the landscape. From the data collection, the research team came up with efficiency frontiers. Through the analysis that found patterns in watershed level land management practices and how phosphorus and sediment reductions affected cost. In the existing landscape, they found that it's possible for phosphorus loading to decrease by 20% and sediment loading by 18% with no loss of ag income. In other words, you can hit 20% improvement with no cost based on where you target those practices. However, hitting the more ambitious targets like 50% or 75% reduction would start to become more costly for farmers in terms of income. The research estimated that 50% reductions in sediment or phosphorus loadings in 7 Mile Creek would cost about $900,000 annually in ag net returns. That doesn't mean it wouldn't be worthwhile to shoot for bigger reductions. Our conclusions so far are heavily dependent on default assumptions regarding the market price of crops and the amount society is willing to pay for various ecosystem services, the researchers wrote. Pennington said that beyond the data they collected about the current landscape, they also engaged in a few thought experiments about what could be achieved if farmers earn compensation for the value of the environmental services they provide. They concluded that if water quality and carbon sequestration efforts were twice as economically valuable as they are now, meeting the 50% reduction goal would be much easier. What if the farmer was getting ag profits plus the ecosystem benefits they are contributing to society? Now that's a good question. Pennington said, we found that you can hit those water quality targets in a much more cost efficient way if we were paying farmers for the social benefit. Ultimately, Pennington hopes that the research will be of assistance to policymakers and government agencies such as the soil water conservation districts. Data and models exist to help them think more strategically in best management practices, he said. It can help inform high-level decisions with limited funds and be more cost-effective to taxpayers. There are practices out there that can be a win-win and have less impact on yield and a good impact on water quality. If we want to get to 50%, we'd have to make some pretty big changes, like whole-scale shifts to perennial crops. Can we hit the win-win targets and the low-hanging fruit? Well, that's what policy actions will need to occur in order to reach those targets. The study will be published later this year in Ecological Economics, and it'll be available for you folks that would like to find more information. So this is a very interesting study. It looks like we can get 20% reduction in phosphorus with no impact on ag income. And that's where we'd really like to take this first step with our producers in Stearns County and central Minnesota and see where we can go. And some of those low-cost BMPs include reducing tillage, maximizing your soil fertility, following the 4 R's for nitrogen, phosphorus, and other nutrient management, making sure you put in the right amount of fertilizer at the right time, at the right place, and in the right form. So I also noticed a lot of fields out there getting rolled, and this is another tool that has advantages and disadvantages. I think farmers know of most of the advantages, but there's also some disadvantages, and that's also associated with soil loss. So please minimize the use on those fields that have the greatest capability for erosion, and that'll help us in the long run. All right, hope you're enjoying this beautiful weather, and have a great weekend. This has been Dennis Fuchs with the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District Update.